Oh, good. There's Harvey.
hmm All right, we're live.
Greetings, greetings. Thanks so much for joining us. Creating Zola Mondays back here with you in 2026. So happy to be here. So happy you're here. Also, happy to have our panelists available. We've had a bit of a struggle getting online this morning, but we are here. We made it. I'm Linda James Myers. I am a past president of ABSI as well as an elder of elders emerita. And we're here to create a little bit of that love, productivity, that profound energy that connects us to healing energy. And we have a wonderful guest today who's going to bring that forward to us from her passion, which is quilting. I know you may not see intuitively the relationship between psychology and quilting, but it is there and so critical. And it's going to help us shift from that whole colonial notion of psychology and our understanding of human behavior to a culturally grounded notion. So, having said that, I'm going to introduce um, Dr. Jonisha Hickson, who is always with us, a real trooper. Let her introduce herself as well as Dr. Harvey Gardner, who will, I think, actually, Dr. Jonisha is the one who's going to introduce Miss Mims.
Oh, I
So,
was
having
just going to
said
pass the
that,
mic because there's not, I don't think I have the words to describe the level of brilliance that she has and that she's able to manifest through her quilt work. But really quickly, I'm Dr. Hickson. I am the chair of the DC ABSI and the DC or the National ABSI Public Relations. So I'm super excited to be here. And I personally received a quilt from Miss Mim. So like this conversation is near and dear to my heart. I'll pass the mic to Dr. Linder.
Hi, I'm Harvey Linder. I'm a clinical psychologist in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm a member of the ABSI Ethics Committee, and that's enough. Yeah.
So then, Miss Mims, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that you were educated at Columbia, and you are a fifth generation quilter. So we're really excited to have you.
So, thank you so much, Dr. Hickson. As you know, I admire you so much. You know that, right? And so our connection began when you invited me to be part of the Salvona Healing Circle Committee this summer, and you were so intentional every time you led us in the Salvona Circle, and you made me laugh hard a lot because you even in the midst of helping us heal ourselves, you were able to bring a lightness to our concerns and our problems. And so one of the things that I do as a fifth generation quilter is we pass quilting on. We pass quilts on. We honor those who have passed and those who are yet to be born. So as a fifth generation quilter, I came to the title this summer after the last quilter in our family's husband died. Now, this was my father's sister, and her name was Florence Henderson. And she married a man named Charlie Blue. And Uncle Charlie passed away in July of this year. And so my cousin called me, my cousin Naomi Screen, and she gave me the final piece of the research that I needed about my father's family. Um, and when I got that final piece and I saw the connection of where I fit in, I was made whole. And so as a fifth generation quilter, I have been researching and writing quilts of my father because the quilt originated in my father's family with his sister Florence. And so we have been lost. And the reason we have been lost is that we were in foster care. Now we had a unique situation because our maternal grandfather fostered us. However, he did not get along with my father. And so he cut off all ties with my father's family, even though um, my mother and my father had 17 children. And he did not want anything to have anything to do with my father's family. So, and not having anything to do with them, Aunt Florence made quilts for everyone but us because she was not allowed to be part of us. And I thought that was a travesty, and I thought I'm going to change that. So what I did was I started making quilts. I made quilts to honor my mom and my dad. I made quilts to honor my aunt and my uncle. And I made quilts to honor those who had passed. Now, I'm going to get to that part right now with those who had passed. I had met Dr. Derek Itafari Wilson online. I met him through Creating Zola Monday. And he impressed me so much coming through digitally. I was able to ask him questions and he answered the questions, and he was very wonderful. But he showed me this book, and I'm going to show it to you. It's called Ubuntu Musings. Now, I saw the book and I said, oh my God, I get it. I said, my brain works like this because this is African ley lines. And so they're all African ley lines. And he offered the book online and he signed my book. He signed my book. And I was so glad to have it. I started reading the book 7:00 every morning. And so the book became part of me. I'm on my second reading right now. And the book became part of me. So in reading that book, I found out Janice was one of his mentees. And he was an outstanding human being. So I called him. I literally called him because one of the things he mentioned was libations when he was talking online. So my sisters who are from Gambia send me material. They just send me all kinds of material all the time because they know I quilt and they know my passion. And so I had this material left over from them, and I called him because I don't give anybody a quilt. I check with them first to see if this is something they want. And I said, I'm going to make this piece for you, and it will help you explain libations to your students. And so I said yes. But little did I know that he was about to transition into the land of the ancestors. But I got the quilt to him, and he accepted the quilt, and it made me so happy, right? So he died, and it upset me a lot. I was very, very upset. So what I did was I started making funerary quilts for him. So I made 4, and I made one with the Sankofa symbol, which when I thread paint the Sankofa symbol, it's a circle. And so we know circles in Ndinkra have no beginning and no end. So the quilts that I made were ley lines, and they're based on the quilts of the G-Ben quilters who do ley lines. And nobody realized that this is what these women were doing. Now, ley lines attach Africa geographically to us, no matter where we are in the world. And I learned that in my research. And I said, oh, that's why those things connect with my spirit. And that's why they make sense when I put them together, right? So I did these beautiful funerary quilts for him, and I wrote papers about them. And I sent the papers to Dr. Hickson. And so she wrote this review about it for me, and it was so powerful. It made me so happy. So I said to her, I said, this is funny to me. So I said to her, I said, oh, I made this quilt for you. The first thing she said was, I can't afford any quilt you So I laughed, right? So I said, listen, this is a quilt. This is a gift from the ancestors. And the reason the quilt was a gift from the ancestors is a quote by Zola Hurston, and it's I found it online, and it's if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. So I think a lot about that quote. Zola Hurston is my favorite author, and I've read everything she's ever written, and she just was so powerful to me. And we used to clothe in our Sankofa healing circles that were led by Janesia and Hank McCoy, with Zora Hurston. And Denise, Dr. Hickson would always say, yeah, this is that lady, you know? And it was so wonderful. That quote fit her because I know she does hard work. She works very hard, right? And I know she gets tired. I know she does because I get tired, you know? And when I get tired, the ancestors help me. So I said, you know what? The ancestors are going to help her with this quote. So it's my first, this is my first layered thread painted quilt that I did for her. And it's very detailed. Okay. So what it is pieces of material from all over the world, and they're cut with Quilting shears. And then it's layered with sheared fabric that looks like an ocean. And I told her, I said, you have to stand back and you have to look at it. I said, because you know what? It's Yamanya. And that's what that quilt is. And so it's got thread and purple threads in it. And it looks like an ocean, but right in the center is Zora Hurston, and she's got a crown, and she's got the gold, and then she's got a butterfly. Now, butterfly in a Negro symbol it means, one of the things that butterflies mean is that they're messengers from the ancestors. Mm-hmm. And so I've done another quote that's in an installation at Emory University, and Dr. Helen McDaniels III, who is now an ancestor, created a veneration for the ancestors, for all the artists who have passed, and it's butterfly. And he hung it up, and it's in Emory University. If you go online and look at it, it's right there. So I created that based on that installation and based on the quilt that I created for him. And in fact, in the corner here, you can see I have one here, and it's based on all the people, the artists that were at Cornell University. And I'm sorry, I'm going to correct you, Dr. Hickson. I didn't correct you. I didn't attend Columbia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. For now, my bad.
But these are all of the artist ancestors who passed that were at the 30th celebration of the Black Arts Movement at Cornell. And I happened to attend that because my professor, Dr. Zola Hussan, curated that. And he curated it through the National Endowment for the Humanities in a grant. So I was able to see that. And I actually met Camille Billipat. I met Faith Ringgold. I met all these wonderful Black artists, right? I met the person who was the artist at Howard University. I can't think of his name right now. But I met all these people, and I even met Haile Garima, who did Sankofa movie. I met all of them. I got to talk to them. And so my life came circle because I got to go to Emory and I got to see the work that Dr. Pella McDaniel did. And what Dr. Pella McDaniel, what was so great about him was Dr. Henry Louis Gates was his mentor. And he was a football player. In fact, he played for the Denver Broncos. He sacked John Elway, right? In my high state, first sack of his career. And then he came to Atlanta, Georgia, and he became a Falcon. But while he was a Falcon, right, he attended classes at Emory. And then he got his PhD. And then he became curator of African American art at Emory University. And so when he died, I was commissioned to create a quilt in remembrance of him. And I did. Again, I painted the Sankofa because the Sankofa is a circle, but it's also a Fibonacci symbol, right? And the Fibonacci is a golden mean, and it's everywhere in nature. But our ancestors gave us that to help us in the now, right? So Sankofa is you have to go back to the future, go back to your past to bring to the present what you need for the present and for your future. Mm-hmm. So that's where my quilting practice came from. Mm-hmm. That's why I do what I do, because we are charged, right, we have a covenant with our ancestors to continually do what they started.
Mhm.
We have to. That's what our mission is on earth. It's a spiritual thing for me, right? So as I learn and grow in my research and writing this book, for all of my relatives who want it for free, by the way, and they're not getting it for free, but no, they have to go to Staples and buy it, okay? And so they have the history of our family because surprisingly, they don't know. They don't know. And
So you
God,
you see quilting as essentially tied to the Sankofa principle, which is reaching back into the past to gain lessons or wisdom for the future. So how
yes, I
in
do.
order to move forward.
Yes, I do.
So do people that you interact with, do they grasp that principle? Does the quilt uh, communicate that to the people that you're talking to?
Yes, because and that's a great question, Dr. Linder. And I love that question because one of the things that Zornia Hurston says, she says that there are years that ask questions and there are years that answer them. So I
Mhm.
remember when I was at Cornell and we're at the Herbert Fifth Johnson Museum of Art, and we're standing up there and we can see Cayuga Lake. And Camille Billipat is there with me. She's standing there. She looked right at me. I'll never forget this question. She said to me, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" And I could not answer that question right there.
Mhm.
But after I did my work and I was doing the work and putting everything in the community and educating people about Sankofa and just Sankofa principle and the
Mhm.
quilting, how it connects spiritually to Black and African cultures, I got the answer. The
Mhm.
answer was I had to learn that about myself and my family and write the book and do the quilt. And
Mhm.
then I could move on. So I got my answer. So yes, Sankofa is very much a part of quilting, especially as we see how it's connected to Africa and African cultures. Okay. There are like the Fulani stars. The Fulani were the horsemen of the Hausa of Nigeria, right?
Mhm.
So when it transferred over to Middle Passage, you know how appropriation works. So the white women that had sewing machines took it and they said, "Oh, this is a flying beast pattern." It's not. It's a Fulani star pattern.
Mhm.
And if you go online and you look in the British Museum, you will see that their horses in their armor, they made that, right?
Mhm.
And if you look online and type in Mansa Musa, they'll show him on a horse and you'll see the Fulani pattern. Well,
Mhm.
I had to do 145th commission of Hampton University, and the sitting president of the United States at the time was Barack Hussein Obama, and so I was charged with doing 3 pictures of Rosa Parks, who was there, Barack Hussein Obama, and the person who commissioned the quilt.
Do it in the
Um,
quilt.
yeah, it's in the quilt. But what I did was I did Fulani stars because this person was in the military and they got a Purple Heart and they were captain and then, all that Gucci stuff. So I did the Fulani stars because it represented the king's horsemen.
Mhm.
They guarded the king, right? And when you saw that pattern, you knew that's what it was. And so we had this outdoor event, and it was uh, beaches to peaches to beaches. So it was honoring the students who were going to Hampton. So what I did was, which is great, I hung 2 quilts up outdoors, and everybody who came by, I explained it to them.
Mhm.
This is what it is. This is where it comes from. This is why I did it, right? And they just it it helped me a lot because they had no idea. They had no idea how it was connected. And so the other piece that had the Fulani stars therein was the Negro Baseball League, because most of the Negro Baseball League players served in the military.
Mhm.
Not many people know that, right? Not many people know that. They served their country in the military, and then they came back and played in the Negro League. Some of them went to the majors. My dad was a Negro League player. He was a Utica Monarch, so he never played, but he was a Utica Monarch.
Oh,
He,
monarchs. Mhm.
yeah, Jackie Robinson played, and Jackie Robinson was a Kansas City Monarch. In fact, my dad and my uncle, when they were like 13 years old, they got in a car and they went and they drove to Daytona Beach and they watched him because they were major athletes. They all were, and but that was the way they got to play. So I had this Fulani Star pattern with the quilt that honored Hank Aaron because Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth record in Atlanta, Georgia in 1979 or 74. I can't remember which year. But the person that I made the quilt for saw him break Babe Ruth record. So I made it, and I made it again in the pattern of Fulani Stars to honor the Hausa of Nigeria, who were the king's horsemen. Okay, so that's my way of doing Sankofa every time I do a quilt. Sankofa is referenced in every quilt that I do. In fact, one of the quilts that I did for Dr. Wilson it had thread painted Sankofa on it, but his family got that one. I made it perfectly clear that was to go to his family. That was not to be sold. And I think they honored my wishes. I'm hoping they did. And but the other three were able to be sold for the Ubuntu Institute, and to raise money for Dr. Wilson's continual work. So the other part about the quotes that I make is the concept of bringing people back from eternity. And that's a concept that Alice Walker writes about. Okay, she writes about that, and Professor Toni Morrison writes about quotes as well.
Bringing them back to eternity?
Bringing them back from eternity.
From eternity.
Yes. So when you make a quote and you dedicate it to them, you are bringing them back from eternity. Mm-hmm. It's almost like doing libations to them every single day. You refer to this quote. It was made to remember them and to bring them back from eternity, right? And to talk about the good works that they did. I remember the one that I did, and it was huge. The one quote that I did for Dr. Wilson, and it has lotus flowers on it. Now, the lotus flower can regenerate itself, right? Mm-hmm. It's in mud, and it regenerates itself. So his work is regenerated all over the world. And so I wrote on the back of it, this quote is dedicated for the 40 years of work that he did. And so if you go online and you research his papers, he was outstanding. His work just touched all corners of the world. So whoever got those quilts will understand that this man is being brought back from eternity. And I do libations every morning, right before I start my work. So have
you had the chance to be a part of a communal quilt where different people come together and they all contribute to the making of the quilt?
Yeah, in fact, here it is right here. The students did this. They were students. They were this is a communal quilt that they did. And it was during the time of COVID. So it was Toni Morrison and Dave the Potter. And the students wrote haikus, right?
Okay. So
I put them together, and I wrote the haikus that Dave the Potter wrote on his pots. He wrote on these pots that he made, and these pots just sold for $10 million. But he put one was, I wonder where's all of my relations, friendship to all and every nation. And it was about his family being sold away from him. So this was a communal quilt that the teachers and the students, and these are honor students, these are junior honor students, we organized this quilt, and they wrote on muslin, right? They wrote all of what they were feeling during the COVID lockdown, and I got to read Dave DePotter's book to them through Google Classrooms, and it's a really good book. It's by Laban Carrick, but the illustrations are by Brian Collier, who's an outstanding collage artist, and he's black. But the book is outstanding. In fact, I'm going to send it to Dr. Hickson so she can have it for her students. But it's a really, really good book. This is the one that I've done. And um, Dr. Shay Richardson, who happens to be the first appointed chair in the history of the Africana Center, she signed it because she worked with me on it with the students. And I also did one to honor her appointment for her at Africana Center. So she has, and they made it part of their permanent collection. So I mean, I'm happy about that. But it's something that has to be remembered. That's never happened before in the history of Africana Center, having a woman chair. So I had to honor that. I had to honor her, and I had to honor that. And so I did, and I took it up and I gave it to her. And she was very pleased with it, and I was very happy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do communal work as much as I can, you know. Yeah. So we did Toni Morrison's novels on the bottom here. So we did Jazz and Song of Solomon, Beloved, The Bluest Eye, Paradise Sula, and the students did their haikus, right? And they're very powerful haikus because they talked about being locked down, and they talked about, you know, what it felt like, and very powerful words, very, very powerful words. So the paper that went along with that was Words in the Time of COVID. And so we incorporated the words of Toni Morrison and Dave DePotter and these 33 honor students. So yeah.
My mother was a quilter, and so she passed a couple of years ago, but when I had to go down and clean out her house, I was able to bring back some of her quilts. And so it brought back memories for me because when she was up here visiting me, you know, she sat down and we sat down at the sewing machine together, and she taught me how to make, you know, some of the designs like the star and the log cabin design. And it was, you know, it brings back, you know, warm memories for me sitting down and quilting together. And, you know, one of the things that happened in our family is that we have family that's in Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina and New Jersey. And, you know, when we were little, we all used to get together a lot. But then over time, we kind of drifted apart, and we would only get together when somebody died. We'd come together for a funeral. And, you know, after, you know, 15 or 20 years of doing that, you know, somebody said, you know, the only time we ever get together is when somebody dies. And, you know, we have to come together and we're all sad. So what we did, we started having, like, we decided that we should have regular reunions. And so we started having a reunion like every 2 years. And what we would do when we had a reunion is we would make like a family shirt, you know. So everybody in the reunion would be wearing the same shirt. And so after like 20, 25 years of doing that, my mother's younger brother, who's an artist, decided that he was going to make a family quilt. And he went back and he got like the shirts from all of the past reunions and put them together in a quilt. And it's this family heirloom that we have that reminds us of all our gatherings and, you know, the times we got together and the bond that we have. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about how quilting has, you know, bonded people together in their family, bonded them with their family histories and traditions and so forth.
Yes, I will be happy to talk about that. One of the really wonderful things I got to do this summer, I was so blessed. I'm telling you, I was really, really blessed. Is I got to travel to Atlanta because the American Quilt um, Festival organizers had good trouble. They had this book, yeah, the quilts of John Lewis. So, well, I had this dual purpose because my my cousin, I call her my sister cousin because we were raised all together. So my aunt, and the anniversary of her home going is January 11th. So she loved us. She loved us because every time my dad and mom would have a baby, they bring it over to the house to her, and that Uncle Philip and my father Hosea, they were very, very close, right? And Uncle Philip, even though he was banned from saying, he'd show up to everything. He'd show up, and Aunt Eunice would show up. And so, so she told me, she said she loved every one of us. She said, but I was her favorite. She said, you were my favorite. She said, you were my favorite since you were 2 years old. And it was just the most wonderful thing for me. So her daughter, her oldest girl, Regina, I started making quilts for her children just to honor my aunt and honor my uncle, and to pass on the tradition of Aunt Florence making quilts for them. So I made two quilts. I made one for her son and I made one for her grandson. So since I was in Atlanta, I took the quilts with me and I presented them to them. But in the meantime, I was able to go to this, and this was just absolutely wonderful. And so I honor them, and I keep the tradition going by presenting these quilts to them. But not just them. My brother, he passed away, and he was close to me, and he never got to see his grandbaby, right? His only grandbaby. And so I made quilts for her too. Her name is Zola, and we just adore her. And so I made quilts for her too. But not just that, we keep this tradition going too. As my daughters and my granddaughters have these milestones in their lives, especially my granddaughter, right? She's my only granddaughter. I only got one. She she's very, very bright, right? So I used to make her dresses as I did my daughters when they were little. I was a homeless mom. So I was fleeing a domestic violence situation with their father. And so I was homeless. And one of the things that I could do, since they were so little, a quarter yard of material would make pretty dresses. And so that's what I would do for them. And so when my grandbaby was little, I'd make dresses for her too, right? So she graduated high school. She graduated at the top of her class in math and science. And so the pieces of dresses, the material that I had left over, I made her a quilt. And I presented it to her because she did so well. And so there's a tradition of quilting for me, and passing it on to the generation. And what was really, really nice about Demetrius is that that's my cousin's son's name. We're sitting in this restaurant. It's called Pascal's, and he started telling me stories, right, about his grandmother, which was my beloved auntie, and how she used to discipline him because he was supposed to be at the street lights and he wouldn't do it, right? and he would tell me stories about her and I would just laugh. And then I told him stories that he didn't know. So we have this quilting brings together these stories, right? That you pass down. And again, it goes back to bringing people back from eternity. You bring them back from eternity with the stories that you carry along with the quilt. And by the way, that's exactly what people did on the Middle Passage. They bought quilting techniques over that survived, okay? That that the G's Bend quilters does, it survived the Middle Passage and even like the pinwheel, right? That's from Ghana. That's from Ghana, and it's called make do, right? And the strip quilting, that's what they do, right? And the strip quilting, and that's what I do too. That survived. That's the Middle Passage survival from quilting, and also is from Mali. You know, Bogalafini is strip quilting, right? After they dry it and they paint it with mud, they sew it together in strips. So that's what I do. I do 2.5 strips, right? And I sew them together and I put it together and it becomes a quilt.
You know, I think that quilting is something that my grandmother was a quilter, and I think everybody in that generation did quilting and sewing of people's clothes. I remember her making clothes for me as a child. And so I fully appreciate the love and passion you have for quilting and for that creation of what could become a part of a historical memory as well as a spiritual record. One of the things that I'm curious about those, do you see young people? Are you passing on that passion? Do you see young people, younger women in particular, picking that up?
Not really, because you know what, we're such a ready-made society, we're such a digital society. They're not picking up, but if I have anything to do with it, I'm going to change that because I do mixed media. And so I do design a lot of things that appeal to younger people and you know getting them off of their gadgets, right? So I do a lot of things that get them involved with their eye hand coordination, and plus is math, right? So they get these certifications and they love that because then they can then they can oh, I can move on, I can put this in a career. So that appeals to them, and then they have this curiosity about, well, how does math come into this, right? Because I didn't like math when I was in school because it wasn't explained to me properly. If someone had showed me that quilting was math, I would have been better at math than I was. And after I was in a business school MBA program, um, compound interest really appealed to me. Really okay. So I I had this readjustment with math through quilting and rulers and everything. And so I work with middle school students, right? So what I do is I go right in and I bring the rulers and everything, and I have them make squares, measure the squares, make the squares, and they make something right there, right? It's like vacuuming. Vacuuming to me is instant gratification. So when they instant gratification, right? They got the little square and you explain where the material comes from. You show them, right, where it comes from. Their eyes light up and they get this moment where, aha, this is great, and I can do it, and I understand math, and so, so I'm changing it. I'm changing it one school at a time. I really am.
So do you do this with a group of young girls or what's your modality?
Yeah, my modality is groups of young girls, especially African American girls, because they're often left out of STEM. So it's usually African American young girls. So I usually have. Well, I had one principal. He was really cool. I call him my forever principal. So he gave me a room, and I just take the girls in, and they, these girls, they did statistics. Martin Luther King. We did that, and it was really wonderful, because young girls, they tell you jokes, right? They learn, but they tell you jokes. They had me laughing the whole time, but they were learning too. And so they made this quilt. They made this quilt, and the quilt went to a national organization, and they made it for Beyond Differences. So if you type in Beyond Differences, you'll see me. They did something that they gave me some award. I can't remember what it is, but it's because of the quilt that they sent to Lily Rachel Smith, and Lily Rachel is the daughter, the deceased daughter of the founder of Beyond Differences. So they did it. They did the quilt, and they had such a good time doing it. And it was based on, it's based on emojis. So I taught them how to do it on emojis, and it was applique. They had the best time, and they got recognition, and so I really like doing that. And the reason I like doing it is because I wished I had someone like me when I was in grade school. Because I was in a, you know, you have, I call them, they're called, there's a book here, but I can't seem to find it right now. But it's called American Apartheid. That's the name of the book. And it's about zip codes, right? How if you're in a certain zip code, you don't get math, you don't get AP nothing. Okay. You really don't. And so we were in a zip code like that. We were in a Cornhill section. And my grandparents were older and they, you know, teachers are right. And the teachers weren't because they didn't help us, right? So I often wish I had someone like me who went in. Actually, I did. I had one woman in our neighborhood, and I'll never forget her. They were going to fail me out of high school, and she went in and she advocated for me. She's like, "Nope, you're not gonna do this. You're not gonna do this. You're not gonna do this." And you know, I graduated high school. Plus, I had a national endowment. They had a national endowment for the humanities program with Munson William Proctor Institute. And so I could go to Munson William Proctor Institute and study art, right? As opposed to being where bullies were in the school that I was in. That was the problem I was having, bullies, you know. And so I spent a lot of my time at an art institute. And so I was able to graduate. And I think that's where my love of art came from. Yeah. So
Earlier on, you began with a quote by Zora Neale Hurston, but it was kind of fuzzy, or at least I couldn't hear it. Can you tell us what that was again and the point you were making?
yes. Okay. So I dedicated this quilt to Dr. Hickson because she was so funny. I told you I said, Dr. Hickson, I made this quilt for you. And she said, I can't afford anything you make.
Right. I heard that part. What was the quote by Zora Neale?
Yeah. And so the quote was, if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it. And that, so I made, the way I made the quilt is I took little pieces of material I had left over and I cut it with painting shears. And so I glued it together, and then I
did
sewed
hear
it.
that part, so you don't really need to repeat it. I was really interested in the quote because I think it's so salient today.
It's
There's
very salient. Yes. It's a very thoughtful quote, but I told that quote because Dr. Hickson worked so hard, and you could see she was very tired, right? But she did it anyway. She did it anyway. She did when she was leading the Sankofa. And it was in the evening, you know, and then she would have those meetings in the afternoon where she had to herd cats, you know, I call it herding cats. And she did such a good job. She was so professional, and she never once yelled at people, or she never once told me to leave her alone because I was sending her stuff all the time. She never did that, right? And so she was so outstanding in her job. I felt that she deserved, this was a way to me through the ancestors to honor her and to let her know, you know, when you get tired, just look at this and think about it, okay? Just, and keep going, all right? Kind of be like Harriet Tubman, keep going, you know, because it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. You know, I know, I'm glad I took the Southbourne Healing Circus with her because they helped me a lot. You know, I was going through a lot with my grandson and his girlfriend, and it helped me a lot. You know, it really did. And she kind of reminded me of who I was and my place in this here and now. And again, she reminded me of the covenant that we literally have with our ancestors. And this idea of a covenant that we have with our ancestors is put forth in Dr. Gilliard's book, and she's out of the University of Georgia. And she writes about teachers remembering. And so she has this program where she takes students to Ghana. And so she writes about this whole thing about how we, you know, we have a covenant. We have a covenant with our ancestors. So we have a covenant with our ancestors, and we have a covenant with those yet to be born. And so my way that I work with my covenant every day is through quilting. And like I said, I sit with my ancestors every morning. So that means I sit with Dr. Pella McDaniel III. I sit with Dr. Wilson. I sit with Camille Billihatch. I sit with Faith Ringgold. I sit with Professor Morrison. I sit with Zora Neale Hurston. And my work, I do my work with them right with me. So it works for me. It works.
Yeah.
And so I don't get tired. I hear things. Okay. And I'm going to share some things with you. I have to write grants, right? I have to write grants because what I do, I have to pay for materials. I have to, use gas. I have to use my car to go. And those things aren't free. I own my own home. I've had it for 39 years, but I still have to pay taxes and gas and electric, and I still have to pay for those things, right? So I wrote a grant. It's funny now, it's funny. But the director of grants, right? She said, I don't know how you can afford to do all those quilts. That's what she said. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Linder.
It's supposed to be time. A lot of time.
It's more than notion.
Mm.
And see, meanwhile, these are great agencies that give you like pennies. They give you pennies. So I'm like, okay, so I have to bite my tongue and I have to call on the ancestors, say, please help me right now, because I don't want the spirit of Bernie Mac to come. I really don't, because I get in trouble. And I have to, I have to ask the ancestors, and they do. They really do, especially Dr. Wilson. He's a living ancestor, and he's right there. He's right there. And I remember when I was at the quilt festival. This is no. I'm telling you the truth right now. So I'm at this quilt festival, right? And so I'm explaining the book. I'm explaining Asili and Ngolo and Mbutu. Mm-hmm. And then one of the donors hit me. He came by and he hit me. Okay. Yeah, he did.
One of the donors.
Yeah, one of the donors. So I sat there and Dr. Wilson just sat right with me, because you don't know what to do when someone does that, right? You don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do. But there was a woman there, I kid you not. She had taken classes with Dr. Asa Hilliard. And so she started talking to me. And she had a piece there. Her piece was Michelle Alexander. Her piece was The New Jim Crow. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. She just started talking to me really calm. And I knew it was Dr. Wilson. And he was telling me not to worry about it, just to, do what I do best, which is talk about him in this book. And I did, and I was okay. Any other time, I would have burst into tears and ran away but not then. And that's because Dr. Wilson was there, and she was there, and Dr. Hilliard was there. So those ley lines and what people, spirituality and ancestry, it really works. It really works. It's in my spirit, and this is what my spirit is calling me to do. So, I don't worry about how much money I do or don't have. The money always comes. The money always comes. A donor will show up, and then somebody will say, "Oh, here, I had this extra. Here, I had this material. I know you're a quilter. Here, I have this. I have that. I have the other." And I always get what I need. So I don't have to worry about people saying things or doing things. I really don't. I just be myself. And this is.
That's such a clear example of a survival strategy that's so characteristic of our ancestors. And it's a survival strategy that we're going to have to adopt now. I think it's probably not so uncommon for many people to communicate with their ancestors. They are a part of us, we are a part of them. So much so that the idea of bringing eternity back gets us back to that circle, which is eternity never left us. It's never left us and never can. So it's a beautiful example that you present for us about how it is that you implement the same survival strategies that our ancestors have and flourish utilizing that strategy, as well as perpetuating the spiritual record that you clearly are able to share for us. And I love the fact that it's clearly resistance.
Yes.
With resistance, and it's so powerful.
You know, for me, it was always symbolic of what our people have done throughout time, and that is making something out of nothing. Making
Amen.
something out of things that other people would throw away and turn it into a work of art, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, my relatives made quilts out of scraps of cloth that were cast-offs, you know, but they turned them into something beautiful and essentially priceless. Because, you know, Dr. Hickson was saying she couldn't afford one of those quilts. It's like,
so funny.
you know, if you think about what goes into making a quilt and the hours and hours of stitching and, you know, it's priceless, you know.
Yep. But see, that was her way of honoring me too.
What
you know,
it costs to create, you know.
Yeah, that was her way of honoring me too. But I wanted her to understand that. Listen, what she does is priceless too, and we can't negate that. Okay, we can't negate that. There is in African cultures, right, and during the Middle Classes, people were lost, right, and they didn't have a burial ritual. You know what they would do? They would take crockery and they would crack it where the person was, and that would recognize that this person is here, you know. And in some funerary arts, they have people who put crockery near graves too, right? But that's, again, it's bringing people back from eternity. They're not lost. They're never lost, right? They're still with us. And so that's where this whole concept came from with me. It started with finding my parents. I had to find my parents. I had to find who they were. They were not, my grandfather didn't allow us to talk about them. That's how bad it was. The only way I knew them was through my aunts and my uncles. And you know, they were phenomenal people. And he wouldn't let us discuss it. He wouldn't let us talk about them. He wouldn't let us talk about our mother. We never knew what happened to her, right? And people, when I was growing up, I know people would look at me like, that's unusual. Well, it's not if you have someone who wants to wipe someone from the face of the earth because they did something they didn't like. And that's not unusual. That's the type of person he was. And he had issues being serving in a segregated military. Not everybody can process that. Not everyone, right? Those were his issues. You know, he's an ancestor now, so I don't deal with that. What I do deal with is bringing both my parents from eternity and keeping the stories that make me who and what I am today, passing that on and breaking generational curses. Okay. So that's the thing that I do. I don't pass on generational curses. I refuse. And so this is my way of keeping my sanity, keeping my covenant with my ancestors, and breaking generational curses, and keeping their stories and passing their stories on to my grandchildren, their great grandchildren, right? So I have this wonderful story. My grandson, right, the middle one, he met my aunt before she passed, right, before she transitioned. So he got to speak at her homegoing. And that to me was the best thing that I could ever hope for, because I tell my grandsons, you needed to know who they were. And I'm sorry that they passed before you could know who these men were, because they were honorable men. They were amazing men, right? He got to meet her and he got to talk about who she was and what she's done. And I thought that was the best thing I could have done. Aside from letting him meet his great grandfather, that was the best thing I could have done. You got to meet her. And I did. I picked him up from school and I drove him to her house. Right? I said, you got to meet her. And he did. And she just adored him because she that's how she is. She really is. So, yeah.
Family, this conversation has been really great. I just wanted to add my 2 cents really quickly because I'm monitoring the time and I have to jump into another meeting. But the quilt and things that you sent to me, outside of the gift of life, I've been telling my family that this is one of the most thoughtful gifts that I've ever received because you could tell, like you could sense the intentionality that you put into the work. And it made me curious. It made me want to ask questions about my lineage and around who might be into quilting in my, in my family. So I really just wanted to extend dua to you and say that we appreciated having you. I don't know if y'all have any last minute comments, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't get off before I said that. Thank you so much.
Well, dua to you too. You did such a great job and you're doing such a great job. I appreciate you. I really do.
I receive.
Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, Dr. Linda, you are so welcome. And thank you for the great questions and sharing your history with us. Everybody, when I talk to people, they're like, oh, I have somebody in my family at quilts. And then they give me these stories. So my spirit is filled up and it's really wonderful.
I resisted the urge of showing the audience my quilting square that my mother taught me to make. So we'll just save that for another time.
We'll put it on our Instagram.
Okay.
Well, the last thing I wanted to say, I'm sorry, Dr. Myers, the last thing I want to say is, Dr. Hickson, that was the purpose of that, for you to find out who in your family quilted and for you to start your stories and get the stories of. That's what I do. I did this event at Cornell University Herbert F. Johnson, and so I made 55. I made 55 quilting journals. Okay, that's 55, right? And that's to get them started on their journey of asking questions about your family. Who in your family? What's their history? What's their story? Because guess what? If they leave, it's like, the African proverb that says, if a griot dies and there's no information, it's like a library has burned down. So griots keep the information of the community, family, and stories. So I think everyone should know their stories. Every superhero has an origin story. So I think everyone should know their origin story.
Well, Ms. Mims, we so appreciate you giving the quilt to Dr. Jonisha, which prompted her to invite you to be our guest today, I'm sure. And our audience, I don't think we've had any questions or comments particularly, but we appreciate you coming. And we know that Dr. Jonisha has to jump off and it is past 2:00.
I do too.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Thank you.
So much.
The conversation will definitely be brief. I'm going to end the live so I can get to my meeting before I get fired.